Welcome to Spinner Rack. This is the Patreon exclusive comic book show for Secret Friends Unite. This episode, unfortunately, Charlie is lost at sea. I think he might be in Atlantis. He might be hanging out with Namor. Who knows? But he's not here. He's actually on a Star Trek cruise, enjoying time. So I brought in some pros to talk about a very special comic book this week. So we'll start off with John Bernardo, who was just on Secret Friends Unite yesterday, and you'll be listening to that before you listen to this. So, John, you're a big comics fan. You're comics on the pod. I'm trying to remember all your details. So, but why don't you tell people where you're from?
Yeah, I'm from a show called Comics on the Spot, where we take a random prompt every episode and we make a comic out of it. I work with two very talented writers and artists, Darren Vogt and Sam Owen. And basically, we come up with this prompt, we kind of build a story, and then they go off and create a comic, like a short comic that we can read for free on comicsonthepod.com. And then we bring in guest writers and guest artists and all that kind of fun stuff to kind of do some of the legwork as well. Related to this episode, actually, we had a bonus episode last season where we had Kevin Eastman on, and we came up with an alternate design of, like, we use the same concept of the turtles, so like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, take those kind of 4 adjectives, and then the last one being an animal, and then we made something else out of that. And then we made our own characters, and then our own Darren Vogt went ahead and designed what those characters would look like.
That is awesome. Oh, I love that. I love that concept. On Secret Friends Unite, we typically do a couple of different things, but we've started doing these, like, we tell a tale, and we call it pitch meeting, where you are given a character name, a setting, an arch nemesis, and there's one other point. You basically randomly pick, like, certain numbers. I assign you, like, those 4 things, and then you have to give me your story. Then you also potentially have to give me actors, and you have to give me a director. That's one of my favorite things we do. It's so much fun. And we've done with video games too, which is fun too. So it's very fun. So that would be fun to have you on to do that. But we're also blessed, if you're watching this right now, you see this wonderful face with a Toronto Blue Jays hat. And that is Mr. Sean Capri from Carpool Gaming. Sean, how are you?
Todd, well, I'm great, except that I'm mad at you in this moment because I kind of wish you let me go first. How am I supposed to follow up that? Like, I haven't talked to the creator of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we got whose line is it anyways? Improv going on over here. Like, this is insane, man. You guys are.
Well, you've done so many cool things, man. You've done so many cool things. Come on, I see what you do in online, man. You're great. Come on. Don't.
Sean, you record well, sometimes you record a podcast in a car. So I've never done that before.
Yeah, that's true. But I'm glad to be here. I have no idea what I'm talking about, but all I know is that I picked up this comic book, 1 or 2 issues at a time. Then it came out in hardcover. I'm happy to chat about it with you guys, but I feel a little out of my league. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm glad to be chatting about this comic book, but I do video games. I don't read books. Like, what is there's letters and words in this. It's too much, man.
But you play a lot of Nintendo games, Sean. You're reading a lot of dialogue.
That's true. They don't read it for you.
Like Zelda?
That's very true.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. And before we get into the why we're here, I just want to say thank you to our patrons, because this show is for you. I want to say welcome to our newest Patreon. That is Francie. She's in the friend zone. So welcome, Francie. Appreciate you. We don't know who you are, Francie. We're still waiting for more details. You're very mysterious. And then our best buds, Jamie Prinky. Thank you very much, Jamie. And our BFFs, Sean, Stella, and Henry Nias, and Missy Merchant. So thank you for supporting the show. You get awesome content like this, and we hope you enjoy it. But now the main event of this Spinner Rack is all about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Last Ronin. This book came out on July 5th, 2022. It's a 6-part series. It's available in hardcover, trade paperback, or in digital formats. I think it even dropped on ComiXology now. So if you want to check this out, definitely do. If you don't want to get spoiled, read the book, then come back and enjoy the ride. Or just if you're curious about turtles, what they're doing in a comic book these days, like a lot of us, we haven't been keeping up with the turtles because they've got over 30 years of content. And, whether they're being radical dudes eating pizza, they're in foam suits, they're CGI characters, they have 85 billion cartoon versions. Even in my Back of the Woods, we have the Mall of America, which has Nick Universe amusement park, and there's a Turtles ride there, which is very cool. So this is going to be an interesting check-in on the Turtles. But before we talk about this book, I want each of you to tell me, what is your relationships with the Turtles? Because we're all different kind of age groups, and depending on what happens, you're at the beginning of it, the middle of it, or you're more into it in the recent incarnations of it. So we'll start with John. John. I know you said once I mentioned this book, you came and set up the signal you wanted to be on. So tell me what your fascination is the Turtles with, because if people are watching the video right now, they may see something in your background which may tell the tale.
I've never heard of these turtles that people are talking about. Never heard of them in my life. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know anything about them. So my history with the Turtles started with the animated show. I'm an 87 kid, so just right at the perfect time of when the show was really there. Just a little bit after the comics. I wasn't reading comics at that age, but the cartoon show is what did it for me. And then it just kind of blossomed from there. I remember, and we all we know what it's like to be from that area, that generation. We didn't know what was coming out. You miss a commercial, you don't know what's happening, right? So I didn't know there was a movie. So I didn't go to the theater to see the movie. One day, my uncle surprised me with a VHS tape, live action Turtles. I couldn't believe it. And I played that tape so many times that I had to get 3 extra copies. And they kept breaking because I kept watching them that much. So ever since that day, Turtles have been cemented in my life. I'm very grateful that 30 plus years later, that they're still relevant, and they keep reinventing themselves and keep doing new things. A lot of people aren't happy with a lot of the iterations that happen, and to me, I say that don't consume it. There's plenty for everybody, and we have the comics for the grown-ups, and we got the cartoons for the younger generation, and we can enjoy everything all together. But yeah, that's where it started for me, and I can't tell you what exactly at this point why I love them so much. It's just ingrained in my life. It's ingrained in my DNA that it's a part of me. I can't ever get rid of it. And picking a favorite turtle has always been the hardest thing, because I find in myself a little bit of each person. I love to be silly like Michelangelo. I also am very hot-tempered like Raphael. When the time is right, I like to lead like Donatello, and I'm a big-ass nerd like Donatello. Sorry, I said Donatello. Leonardo, lead, and then Donatello when I'm feeling like just a really geeky person. So I find the best of every turtle. And I really do like how every version always comes to the same thing, where it always nails their personalities, and it always nails the brotherhood that they have together.
Very, very cool. Very excellent. Sean, how do you love being a turtle?
I love being a turtle. It's so funny. You were talking about like the different ages here. I guess I'm middle age. Todd, is that what that means?
I am older than you. The elder. And yes, I'm not sure where John sits in this. Yeah, I'm not sure where John sits in this age group.
You're a splinter.
I am, yes.
Oh man, the blue flame and the crying around the campfire. Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah.
I think John and I are like maybe that perfect age. I was born in 84, so very similarly, sort of like born into the world where you only know Ninja Turtles, and you don't even realize, especially back then, that this is taking over planet Earth. That like it's not just you who likes it, it's your neighbor and their friends and so on and so forth. It's just like this phenomenon. And I have a couple like very specific memories with the Turtles. One, when I was in kindergarten, there was a like your dad comes around and you build a kite together, and you can kind of design on. They give you this sheet of plastic, you can draw whatever you want on it. And when it came my turn to decide what we were going to draw on it, they're like, "Let me guess." And I said, "Yeah, Ninja Turtles." And they're like, "Yeah, you and everyone else." And that was my first, like the teacher said, "Yeah, everybody's doing turtles these days." And that was my first little glimpse into, like how popular it was, like I kind of had this weird realization and connection that this wasn't just me. It was a huge phenomenon. And it was, again, perfect timing because the NES game was there and it was impossible, but who cares? The toys were probably the first thing that we were like going around to collect. We were doing hockey cards a little bit, of course, to overpower some of the other cards that I had, but it was those action figures, man, that we didn't take good enough care of at all. And it was April O'Neil back then. I remember being incredibly difficult to find. So between the cartoon, the NES, the arcades, Turtles in Time, you end up getting for Super, like we were eating well back then. And to your point, John, about you touched on so many things. Like I think the reason it connects so well is exactly what you touched on. There's 4 distinct personalities that, especially at that time, were so 90s. They're so like extreme in those cases, but identifiable. You could pick your own. Everybody had their favorite, whether it's the color or their personality. I think that was definitely part of it. And this is how old I am, Todd. You can maybe resonate with this a little bit. Where I learned of the movies from the newspaper. I saw the articles in the newspaper, and and my friends were chopping it up. Yeah, dude, like we were cutting out the pages and bringing it to school and going like, "This is real." One of my favorite movie posters of all time is the 4 turtles coming up out of the manhole in New York City. This ain't no cartoon, dude. Like they crushed it. It was so perfect. It's so good. Oh, and you got the Super Mario 3 there too. Like incredible. Oh yeah. So yeah, Turtles 1 and 2, Secret of the Ooze, of course. I completely fell off with 3, as any true Turtles fan should. That is absolute trash. And then kind of fell off from there. Kind of coming back into it here. I recently discovered that my dad had 4. I don't even know what exactly they are, but they're from the original run of the comics. They're like some sort of. I'll grab them in a second. I don't want to be rude and just kind of like leave right now. But I've got like 4 books from from '87.
The actual issues.
I don't think they're individual. They're not individual issues. I'll bring. Maybe we'll chat about it afterwards. But I need to know what I'm holding on to here because they're old.
You might be holding on to something good.
Maybe
87. That's probably the original. Was it Mirage? Was the original publisher?
Mirage. Yep. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. So I mean, absolutely. I've got some stuff with like no differentiation between their bandanas and whatnot. So I mean, this is very meaningful, and it's been decades since I've touched anything with regards to the Turtles. So it was cool to come back with this because it's very much like almost like God of War on PlayStation. Like this grew up with me. Like the last I touched on was like pizza and hey cowabunga doo and blah blah blah. And then this is very serious. Like this isn't very fun, this read that we've got here.
There's no party here.
No party dudes. Yeah. No skateboarding and being crazy. And the only reason you use your weapons is to shoot down chandeliers to fall on the bad guys. So that's typically what you did. Yeah. Nobody you didn't use your sword to actually slice anything except your pizza. Very shortly, this is how old I am. I was in high school when the comic book came out. I was in junior high when the comic came out. And in high school, that's when the craze happened. The cartoon, Chef Boyardee, cereal, the movie. I remember going on a date with the first girl I went on a date with. We went on to see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with her sister, and it was a big thing. And I'm like, well, this is kind of cool. We're all having a good time. And the movie wasn't horrible. And it should have been. Yeah. It should have not been good. I mean, those suits and everything, but they got some talented people. They took it seriously. It was amazing. And then video games and everything else they touched was amazing. And it's just like John, you and I were talking about like Power Rangers. TV Turtles is very similar time frames a little bit, but also every generation seems like gets in the Turtles phase, and they just do. And if you've got young kids, you can show them Turtles and they'll be in. And if there's the series you don't like now, there'll be a series you like later. And we're getting a Seth Rogen film, which is just crazy. There's a Nickelodeon series every 2 or 3 years, and my son was big into the CGI animated one he loved so dearly. But yeah, it's just come with me all the days. I love the video games, and the Turtles are great. Once again, I talked about if you want to learn a little bit of history of the Turtles, there's a couple documentaries, but my favorite is the Toys That Made Us. by Netflix.
Nice.
They did a great Turtles episode. So it's a lot of always drama of those because like the creators, everything's happy and then they fall apart. But I'm glad in this book we're reading today, the creators kind of came together, which is very nice. So that leads us into the actual reason why we're here. And that is TMNT, The Last Ronin. This is Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird are joined by, I have to make my screen a little bit bigger, Tom Waltz. He was actually the writer who's done the last 100 issues of the IDW series. And then artists Esau and Isaac Escorza did the art, and Ben Bishop as well. And there's a very good intro by Robert Rodriguez. So that's really neat that, they got a famous film director to do the intro. And that's why, how much these turtles have touched people. And this is really the equivalent, I would say, this is essentially Old Man Logan. This is basically The Unforgiven. This is a story in the far future about heroes that have fallen on hard times. And this is all about a redemption tale. And this is the Turtles' chance to do this. And kind of like The Dark Knight. And I love this trope. And it can be used almost by everybody, but not always well. And so we got this book. It's a 6-issue series. And essentially, this story has a lot of twists and turns, which I really appreciated. It's really about the story of one turtle surviving to exact revenge on his family he's lost. I don't want to go into too much spoilers, but we definitely can because we give spoiler warnings. So with that, I want to get impressions. Yeah, we're going to have to get impressions. So with that, I am not up to speed on the comic and if this is part of the continuity and it's led to that. So I don't know, but as a standalone story, I think anyone could approach this book with a little bit of knowledge about the Turtles. I don't think it required a lot. Now, there were some of the villains where it's like, okay, yeah, that's that guy. He's not the guy from the comic or the cartoon who's goofy and who has, buzzing wings like Baxter Stockman that I remember him as. And there is no Shredder, but there are, it's the next generation of Shredder, I guess, or the generation after that.
Yeah,
Shredder's grandson. Yeah, well,
there you go. Yeah.
We get there. Yeah. So we get there. So with that, let's go into what made this book worth it to you or not worth it to you. So we'll start with you, Sean.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of the mystique around it. You mentioned there's twists and turns around, and the first one is at the end of the first book when you realize and you're kind of guessing throughout every page. You're like, who is this? Like you could, I don't know if you guys had a thought on this, but like it seemed like it was almost too obvious to be Raph. Just like this brooding, just angry, blah blah blah, and it just they kind of flipped it on its head to give you kind of the biggest impact, I guess. This could have been any of the Turtles, but just going from party dude Mike to this version of Michelangelo, I thought was, oh man, like it set the stage for what the rest of the story was going to be. It was that this, like nothing is good. It just seemed like really had fallen on really tough times. But that was one of the first things that that caught my eye about it, because I'm not in the comic circle, but I can't remember. I wish I could give credit to who it was, but somebody pointed me in this direction and went like, there's a turtle and everybody else is dead and you're not going to believe who it is. And that was it. That was the elevator pitch that got me into this thing. I'm like, okay, I've got to check this thing out. And I did the thing I've done far too often with comics where I bought like 2 issues and then found out that there was a collected edition coming out later. I'm like, oh man, I just wasted my money on those other 2. I'll just end up getting this thing. But yeah, it was the art style. It was a little bit of familiarity with Turtles from back in the day, and a yearning and want to get into comics more these days. That really had me just like, this was a pretty easy decision to get this book, especially because it was like $40 Canadian. Like I feel like that's wrong. They should be charging double this.
Just what you paid for your issues almost paid for the whole trade.
Don't tell me, dude. I don't. I'm trying to like. Just write it off as a learning expense and getting into all this stuff.
I always wait for the trades, but for this one, I could not wait. And I remember getting the very first issue, the very first print, because it sold out really fast. And I'm not a single issue guy because I don't want to have to take care of them. I don't want to have to keep them safe. They're too delicate, right? They're worth stuff, all that kind of stuff. I just like the hardcovers. I don't have a lot of space. So I remember after I got all 5 issues, and then I found out the hardcover was coming out, I was able to sell all 5 issues for, triple at what this cost. So
Oh yeah.
I
Oh
sold all,
wow.
because the first issue I had the first printing, right, which sold out really quick. But then there's other printings, of course. And just because of that one issue, the value went up. So I was able to sell all 5 for $100. This was on sale on Amazon for $20. So it was win-win. But I'll never do the single issue thing again. I'm
Yeah.
not going to get that
Yeah,
lucky again.
the single issue thing burns people because typically the comic shop will then have like, oh, we ran out of 3. It's like, oh, I'm screwed anyway. You want us to back order it? And they're like, it's not available, but we can get it for you in 5 months. I'm like, well, that's when the trade's out.
And these issues are big issues, right? And Sean can relate because we have to pay the damn conversion rate. So you in the States will pay $8.99 an issue. I paid for the issues anywhere between $12 to $14.99 after taxes. So it adds up really fast. And not to mention, they'll try to sell you on the variants, and the variants cost another $5 to $10 to $20 extra. Like one of the variants at my shop was $20, $30 for the first issue. So it's pretty insane. And they had over 70 variants for this comic. It's nuts.
Whoa.
Which you can see all at the back of the hardcover, of
You can
course.
see in the back. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a nice addition, and all the different artists they had for it, which was really interesting. So I want to touch on the art really quick, because this book does a lot of time sequencing, which sometimes I thought it was well done. Sometimes it was like, wait, when is this? And a lot of things happened. So it was a little bit, when it worked, it was great. When it didn't work, I thought it was like, okay, we just flash forward 5 minutes or something like that. Didn't feel like it was worth it to do that flash forward. But I love the fact that they had, I believe it was Kevin Eastman doing some of the flashbacks in the original Turtles art in black and white. That was really cool.
That felt so good, because it's like, yes, it's kind of a full circle. Ben Bishop is an amazing artist, and he's been working with Kevin Eastman a lot. So to see kind of Ben take the lead, and then Kevin Eastman is doing anything that takes place before, was just icing on the cake. And I think a lot of the art, like the kind of the design choices you're talking about, that kind of seemed a little conflicting. If I recall correctly, it wasn't always Ben Bishop on the art. There was somebody else on the first issue, and then kind of was a little bit rocky. There was a lot of time in between issues. I mean, like 6 months, it said, sometimes in between issues. It was crazy. So I think there was a lot of issues there. But once they found their footing, like you said near the end, once they realized, hey, Kevin should do the flashbacks, it kind of all started to piece together a little bit better.
Yeah, so with that, I mean, this is a story told in multiple parts. One of the other things I thought that was really highly effective, but I didn't think they used it sometimes. They didn't use it all the time, which was essentially the Turtles were always with Mikey. And it was almost his manifestation of them. They were in the shadows, and conversations of just basically he hasn't dealt with his loss of all of his brothers, his family dead. And he is typically not the one people have leaned on to be the lead. He's a screw up, all these things. So he's dealing with all of these things, and he tries to deal with it. And that's where it's a resolution story. We get lots of new characters showing up. April O'Neil has lost not only Casey Jones. We find out that they're engaged in one part of the story. Then tragedy happens. We think all of these characters are dead, and she emerges, and now she's got a couple of limbs gone, and she is also a mother. And that took an interesting turn as well. Yeah. So with that, what were your favorite parts of this book? And anybody who wants to go can go.
I mean, for me, my favorite parts were just, not favorite, but seeing a lot of nods to kind of old Ninja Turtle franchise, like media, like little hints here and there, like little, nothing that's coming to my mind right now, but there's all these little nods and cameos. At one point, they had a little cameo of Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, like on a subway, like they just had them actually drawn out. But just seeing how they took the world, and just to see, it wasn't that like Mikey was just this kind of super soldier. He was like, you see at the end of like the first issue, second issue, he's beat down. He's barely making it to this fight. You know what I mean? So to see them kind of not be undefeated anymore, to see that this is real, that these are no longer these strong characters that no one could defeat, was frightening, but also felt good, to kind of see that. And just seeing how he grew, the seeing the deaths of each turtle, which again I didn't like seeing their deaths, but the emotional punch that they packed really made me love the story more, just because of how much it hit hard when you were reading those parts.
Sean, we talk about some of those nostalgia points, say the Mousers, as they call them. Baxter Stockman, he is like essentially half man, half machine. We got no Krang, which is always my goofy favorite part. He wasn't involved there. No Bebop, Rocksteady, and things like that. So I know that some of those are more of the goofy, cartoonish parts. But did you feel like it was a good balance of balancing like modern and some of those nostalgia pieces?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is the premise itself creates a challenge, right? Where like the premise itself is there's one left. Everyone is dead. Something terrible or a series of terrible things has happened, and so everyone is gone. And how do you tell an interesting story with one person left? And so slowly but surely, as the pages kept going on, you were either reintroduced to April O'Neil or then introduced to new characters, which kind of like filled out the world a little bit more than it would. Like it could have been like The Road. It could have been like just two people just in this wasteland. And it's much more interesting than that. The balance between now and the past, and the new characters that were introduced, I just felt like it created a sense that the world continued on. And that's kind of the theme of the book anyways, is just that you kind of like life does go on and you have to find meaning in spite of just terrible, terrible things happening. Also balancing out just this unending revenge story. Like you've got to do something. And on top of it all, I feel like the stakes are serious. This doesn't seem like a winnable battle. And in some cases, it even seems like a bit of a suicide mission. And so like, I think all of that combined is really what kept me along for the ride the entire time. And anytime tragedy struck, it didn't feel cheap. It seems like that could be something really easy, like, and they're dead. But it just felt like, to John's point, it did pack a punch, felt earned. And because of, at least for me and probably most people reading this with the history of the Turtles, like they all meant something. I'm curious for people who aren't really familiar with the Turtles and that familial bond that they all share, if that still comes across. I think some of the flashbacks where the other Turtles are there with Mike maybe can bridge that gap a little bit. But again, that's another piece that helped to fill out this world where otherwise it just would have been him by himself with it, just trying to figure out how to fight the big bad at the end. But yeah, man, I think every book, as it should, ends with a bit of a cliffhanger. I kind of wanted there to be a mistake, like maybe they weren't dead. Maybe they are you sure they're gone? Like I kind of was hoping, like I was thinking maybe one of them would show up at the end or something, but that's too cheap. That's how I would write a dumb comic book. And I'm glad that they didn't do that. They stuck with the premise and fulfilled it all the way through to the end. So yeah, man, I just think there's a lot to pick out with this.
That's how you keep a franchise going, right? You don't kill off your characters,
right?
Or you have the next generation of them. And I think that's an interesting point. I think, I really enjoyed this book a lot. I do think there was, like I said, some weird time framing of things, because like it was like doing a lot of flashbacks, but some of the flashbacks, like the battle scenes at the end, I kind of thought those were a little bit didn't have to be used. Kind of like it's like Star Wars where they're talking about taking down the Death Star and then you see them then taking down the Death Star. So same thing here. So kind of iffy there. I thought the villains were the weakest part of the story.
Agreed.
Yes.
I mean, they were hardly in it, and I never felt like they were given much depth, or like I really felt like they were not going to fail. So, and especially, the leader of the Foot Clan, I don't know. He felt like he was a one-note villain, and that's where I thought there could have been more there with some characters that supported him. I mean, we got a little bit of that when they went to Japan, like his I don't know if his first in command or things like that. But he kind of came off one note. So I wish that would have been a little bit stronger, because in some of the other series, you've seen how good the Turtles villains can be. So maybe they didn't want to have that focus. They just they didn't have enough time but that was kind of my weak point for this series. But I thought pretty well done for 6 issues. Now, we are getting a sequel to this, which I find interesting. But to your point, I think, Sean, you kind of they kind of put some teasers on what's happening next. So my question is, whose kids are those turtles? Who had spawn? Who laid some eggs?
Maybe it's unrelated. Does it have to be their kids?
I think there's just turtles. I have not dipped into the new comic yet. They already released issue 1. Issue 2 is expected in March sometime.
The sequel or just the ongoing? Oh,
the sequel prequel. Yeah, it's called Lost Years, and it takes place. They do have, like, in the first issue, from what I understand, they do have a little bit of, like, you see everything that leads up to the last Ronin, but from what I've heard, you also do see the turtles that you saw at the end of Last Ronin, the original book. You do see those turtles growing up already. So they are kind of doing like a little bit back and forth. So it's a follow-up, it's a prequel, a little bit of a sequel, it's a little bit of everything. And it's going to be 4 issues as well. Not as well, it's by itself. So that one is already out. That one I'm probably going to wait for the trade on. But they're continuing to build on it. Yeah, it's the new Turtles.
Well, very cool. So at this point, if you were going to rate this 1 out of 4 turtles, what would you give it?
They have to be whole turtles too. You can't give partial turtles.
Well, you can say 1 turtle and 3 ghost turtles.
Oh, it's true.
That's true. Well, maybe 4 ghost turtles.
Oh, 5? No, you can do 5 Splinter. If you want to do, Master Splinter, go 5.
Splinter, can we just say, I don't know if we're wrapping it up, but like Splinter's end is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it is, I
decapitate some people, man.
He just goes down in a blaze of glory. Like, yes, it's like better than Yoda, learning that Yoda can use a lightsaber. It's just like, this is way better.
It is actually really funny that you said that, because I was reading that Kevin Eastman's told Ben Bishop, when he was talking about for the final fight, he said, remember when you saw Yoda kicking ass against Count Dooku? He's like, it needs to be like that. So
that's so funny. Is that real? Wow.
Yeah, that's real. That's an actual quote, but that was the inspiration. He's like, okay, remember that. Okay. Oh, okay. I remember Yoda. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and behead everybody.
Right. But this is great.
I think that was sorry, I was just because I think what his concept was just like, hey, remember Yoda, this little tiny person, never really kicked ass, but you knew he could kick ass. Well, that's Splinter. Let's see him kick ass.
It's like the old guy who's just struggling to walk, and then he just throws his cane away, and then he starts doing flips. I mean, it was just like that, to your point, John. Thanks for pointing that out, because Splinter, typically he's been the pacifist, has been like, use your skills for defense only. But he's like, I think at that point, he's just like, I'm too old for this shit. He had too much. And he's like, no, I'm not going down. No, we got to retreat. No, I am not retreating. And they're like, okay, we're going there.
No, I got this.
Yeah, it was pretty damn cool. The beheading, and that was another thing too. Of back in the day, used to say, "Well, they're robots, so we can kill them." And this one, there was no. It doesn't matter if they're robots, if they're this. They're going down.
Backs up against the wall is really like, and it's actually fitting that. I don't know. Again, I'm actually starting to collect the IDW collections as they're going on sale. I'm starting to fill up my collection there. So I don't know if this happens elsewhere, but for me, the one time that he does kind of go to town is in a do or die. And in fact, he does die situation. Like, it just seemed fitting. He's not just doing like for kicks. He had to, like, this was it. And the ending for him is brutal. But I don't know. I just felt like this was one of those scenes that I could read over and over again. And actually I just feel like it was a better part than anything to do with the main villain. Anytime he was battling Mikey was battling his way up, I'm like, okay. I felt like everything else was much more interesting. And it was just like, all right, like panel after panel of kicks, like, and punches and whatever. And I kind of like glanced over it, to be honest with you. I tried to appreciate the art, but this was the scene that just really had me on the edge of my seat, wondering what was going to happen. And then even like the way that it shows it, like it kind of is almost like a first person, just arrows at Splinter. And I'm like, are they saying what I think they're saying? Like, this is it. This must be it. And he's gone. So it was a bit kind of just surreal on that front. It really caught my attention. And yeah, I mean, like nobody survives this, dude. Like everybody's dead.
Everybody's dead, and like they said, to be continued at the end of this. So, we're getting a kind of a prequel to this, which is kind of like the middle times. And then if we truly get a sequel, then is it going to be is there going to be something more there to explore? Considering both villains are dead, all the turtles are dead, Splinter's dead. So then. Yeah. There has to be something new. A relative of Shredder pops up.
Another relative.
Clones. Who knows? We've seen all these tropes and things. Hopefully it's good, right? But what I really appreciate this is whenever you love something, it's always good to be able to point to one thing to anybody, say, you know what? You may not love turtles, but I think you'll enjoy this. I think it's great when every franchise has that thing. Yeah. And I feel like this is it for turtles in regards to a book. I mean, if you have a game, you'd probably say Shredder's Revenge or something like that. Yeah.
Do not get me started on Shredder's Revenge. I have played that game way too many times.
So good. Good. Yeah. So any other points before we give our review? Sorry if I cut you off too early. Didn't mean to. But any other points you want to go over on the book?
I don't know. The only thing I would say is that this felt very different. And I just felt like this wasn't just another version of the Turtles that I could like or dislike. This just felt like totally fresh. And it wasn't, I didn't like the design of this, or I think they look weird, or I think they talk weird. Like this just felt totally separate from the Turtles I knew growing up. And I think that's another reason why I was really captivated by this, where I've kind of turned my nose up at other Nickelodeon versions or the Michael Bay movie that I noticed that you failed to mention in the intro. All these other versions and iterations of Turtles were like, they felt like that. It was like, it's slightly different than the last one. This felt just completely different. And I want more of this world. I'm nervous with the 4 turtles at the end, the little baby turtles. I'm kind of just like, that's a little much. But I got to keep an open mind to it. But the book itself, like that, we kind of commented the covers on the back, I think, are the reason why you get this. And aside from the single issues, and the paper quality, I think, is great, and just the illustrations are awesome. So people should definitely. This is not an overpriced book at all. And anybody who has any familiarity with the Turtles, I think, would enjoy this. And then as somebody who's not really huge into comics either, like I enjoyed my time with it. This is Scott Pilgrim, dude. Like not really that deep into this stuff yet.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to cover this book, because it's my opportunity to catch up with the Turtles. I've never really read, except for back in the day, read recent Turtle comics, and I want to touch on things that are kind of out of my wheelhouse that I can go, okay, who likes these things, and can kind of either bring me back into it or tell me why something does matter. So thank you all for being on. So with that, we are going to now press everybody to make a review of this book. And we'll say 5. A Splinter and 4 turtles. John.
Out of 5, can I do a half? Do I have
baby turtle?
Yeah, I'll do 4 turtles and one and a baby turtle, which is a half. So 4.5. And the only thing that's stopping is, like we've talked about, is that the villain felt lackluster. He was when they first introduced him, I thought he was going to be so much more. And as it went on, you're like, oh no, you are one note. Shredder's always been pretty one note, but he's always had like these little subtleties to him that made you feel like he was more. Like in the original cartoon, he was a little bit of a scientist. Like he was smart. He helped design things. In the 1990 movie, he was just menacing, right? So here it's kind of like, it almost feels like a spoiled brat of the family. You know what I mean? Like, what do they call nepotism, right? When you have like the famous
Nepo baby.
Yeah, exactly. So he's kind of like that, where
a Nepo villain.
Yeah, exactly. Where he had that, my dad Shredder, like the greatest villain, he could never kill the turtles and then I'll kill the turtles, yada yada yada. And he's trying to finish what his great grandfather or grandfather, I forgot which one it was, finish what he started, right? So he was the least great part about it, but the most important part of it is we got the turtles, we got their story, and I felt like this was more about them than anything. They just needed a bad guy. I don't think there's any other bad guy they could have done. I don't think they could have done a Shredder, because if they were still fighting Shredder after 30 years, that'd be pretty weak. That's the one problem they have with a lot of iterations. It's always Shredder. And I'm always grateful for, like, for example, the new movie that's coming out. It doesn't seem that Shredder is in the main plot. So I'm hoping that's something to say for a sequel. He's their main villain, so you don't want to just use him right away. You know what I mean? So I'm hoping that that's something that we can kind of grow on and just start from the bottom and go up. But yes, 4.5 out of 5 for me.
So I think it's going to be 2 turtles on top of each other is make half. So 2 baby turtles stacked on top.
Okay, well, these are baby turtles.
Giving you options. That's all I'm doing here. Yeah. Okay, Sean, how many turtles, rats, and baby turtles?
Yeah, I think 4 numbers out of 5 numbers, I think, is generally where I'm landing on this. My thought on Shredder, though, is like he can survive getting scrunched in the back of a garbage truck, and then also wood at the end of.
Please don't get me started.
He can handle that entire dock, which was like
he couldn't. That's what killed him, though.
That's ridiculous. But that's
the garbage truck, though.
I think. Shout out to Baxter Stockman in this. I felt like it was like they could have maybe done a little bit of a flip. I don't know. I don't write comics, but I thought like he had a great ending. His death is spectacular, and probably better and more interesting than the big bad, anyways. But yeah, 4 out of 5. This is totally. I recommend it, and yeah, I don't think that we're in disagreement here at all. Maybe a little more fleshed out on the actual end villain. I do wish Baxter Stockman had. He's just kind of like he's just a tool in the whole thing. Like send out your robots, and he really could have stepped up maybe a little bit more.
Hey, there's always more books. Like when they saw the success of this, they're gonna start to milk the heck out of this now.
I'm sure he cloned himself. Bring it. Yeah, I'm sure he cloned himself, and he's got little Baxter Stockmans and little jars to come back. We'll see if that happens. I'm gonna go 3 turtles and 3 baby turtles stacked up. So 3 3/4.
Using it.
Because I really did like the book, but I just, like I said, villains are a weak point. I found some of the flashbacks I think not needed to tell the story. I think made it more complicated. And then the one thing that I just got a little confused by was the whole Fugitoid robot guy. I don't know who he is. That's really odd. Kind of threw me for a loop. I'm like, because that was like the only thing I kind of felt like it doesn't feel like it belongs. Because it's a little too.
He was from the original comics. I see, and that's when I tell people you just need to have basic turtle knowledge. You do just need basic turtle knowledge. Fugitoid is the one piece of turtle stuff that most people won't catch. He was in a lot of. He was in the 2012, the CG one that came out, the cartoon. He was in that show briefly. Other than that, I don't know if he's been. Maybe he was in the Fox one from 2003 as well, but he's not well known, right? So that is the only part of turtle knowledge I would say is a gap for a lot of people, because if you didn't read the original comics, he's probably not something you're familiar with.
Got it. Well, that's minor nits, but it's a very good book. And I think if you're curious about this book, the cover is really what draws most people in when they see this, like, oh, this is serious. So if you do like those stories that feel like Old Man Logan, basically the old withered hero redeeming himself, I think this is a great take on that premise. So very, very good. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for hopping on the show, talking about some turtles. Now, once you're done, your only assignment is to now go listen to your favorite turtle song. Can be a theme song, can be the Ninja Turtle rap, can be Turtle Power. There are many other songs in the Turtles wheelhouse that you can play, and it just will brighten your day. So that's your only assignment. So with
the entire movie soundtrack.
Absolutely. If you want, and watch the video for Turtle Power. It's so 90s. It's fantastic. Love it. So with that, John, tell people where they can find you.
Find me on Twitter at John S. Bernardo, where I probably will tweet about turtles and other comic books. And you can follow the podcast at Comics on the Pod, or go to comicsonthepod.com.
Excellent. Sean Capri.
You can find me generally in Canada, but if you're on the internet, you can go to Twitter at Sean Capri, Sean like Connor, Capri like the Pants, and all the podcasts that we do over at Carpool Gaming, at Carpool Gaming on Twitter, and probably Instagram, and I think we even have a TikTok, but definitely a YouTube. You can go there as well. Now we're McDonald's.
Well, absolutely. McDonald's, Swiss Chalet, any of those Canadian places, I have no clue what the hell they are. I have to ask Mark all these things. Like, is that a thing, Mark?
In the States?
But not Canadian McDonald's, apparently.
Oh,
yeah,
it's the same.
Yeah,
no
ours has a
pizza
little
these
maple
days.
on the M, on the golden arches. We got a little.
You know what? I've never realized that.
Oh wow, that's
What?
amazing.
Oh, it's all.
I don't think I ever realized that. So do
That's
you
what
get
makes it
the
different.
States have an American flag then?
There's maple syrup in every beverage there too, Sean. Sorry,
That would make
it's not really
sense.
diet.
You put that on the burger though. That's no joke. Put that on a burger. Let's go. Maple
yeah.
syrup on a burger. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, very good. You can follow me at TOxtra. And then for all things Secret Friends, go to @SecretFriendsU, secretfriendsunite.com. Go to our Discord. Join us. We're having a good time over there talking about food, comic books, video games, and tech and all things nerdy. And then go to our Patreon. Check it out. See if you like it. See our Patreons who are up there now on our Patreon part of our website at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. So thank you all. Thank you for joining us in this journey of comics. And as always, Excelsior!
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow @SecretFriendsU on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.